Is there a plan? Was there a plan? What do you think Gruden thought, and what has been wrought?
Well, on day one, I think he thought he was going to come in as a conquering hero. I think about 4 months in, he realized, no, this team's not close. And I think his coaching impatience got the better of him on Khalil Mack and got in the way of his general manager's hat. So he traded him when he didn't need to. And basically, I think at that point, every player on that team recognized that they were all going to be gone within a year or two at the most. And when that's how you go into a season where you know that your coach doesn't care whether you live or die, you're not going to give that, that extra 3% at the end of a lost game. So I think he didn't come in thinking he was going to blow it up, but he got to blow it up pretty quickly. And the one thing he missed in all of that planning was that this was not a football problem. This was a cultural one because the team is leaving in 2 years. And he was brought in part, to make people in Oakland feel like, hey, we have one chance at something before they leave. And what they got instead was another rebuild after the 3 they've already had. And it was going to be from a guy who they thought was going to be their savior. So there was this sort of massive cultural disconnect that Gruden missed completely. And now he's reaping the whirlwind.
Right. So now it just leaves basically one player of significance standing, or as too much last night, horizontal, and that's Derek Carr. How do you see that playing out? Do you think that Gruden is going to try and knock on Mark Davis's door and say number 4's got to go too? What do you think, Ray?
I think the coach in him, because he's got 2 jobs, and they are basically arguing with each other on a daily basis. So I think the coach in him is saying, can I replace him? And if I can't replace him, when can I? Because I think a lot of this depends on where they finish in the draft and whether they can get, the quarterback they want. Because if they can do that, on June 2nd, they're going to do something about Carr's contract so that they can get out from the more onerous parts of it. But if they can't replace him, he will smile and say, Derek's always been my guy. And that's part of the problem that Gruden's got, is that he made promises, and a series of them, that he hasn't followed through on. So he's basically broken faith with not just the city, but with the team itself. So they don't trust him when he says, he's my guy, because he said it about Michael Crabtree. He said it about Amari Cooper. He said it about Khalil Mack. He's saying it now about Derek Carr. And his track record is to say one thing and then either do another or plan to do another later.
NBC Sports Bay Area's Ray Ratto here on the show. What do you think Mark Davis is thinking right now, this morning? What do you think?
I think he's got his head in one of his desk drawers, and he's slamming the drawer closed every 5 seconds. Because Gruden was going to be part of Davis's exit strategy, which was, I'm leaving Oakland, but if this goes well, people won't be mad at me when we do. And that's the same reason he brought in Marshawn Lynch. It's the same reason he signed Derek Carr to the big contract, because he wanted to show everybody in Oakland, I want to do right by you before we leave. And instead, it has turned out exactly the opposite. And the only thing that Davis can say for himself at this point is, well, at least they hate Gruden more than they hate me.
I mean, 9.5 years left on a $100 million contract. He's unfireable, Ray. And so, and the question is though, does Gruden still have it? I mean, do we view this as a guy who has seen all of the offensive schemes and strategies from college and pro based on all the tape watching that he did at his Fired Football Coaches Association office while working for ESPN, and he does have an eye for talent and realized that he didn't have it and got rid of all the high-priced guys with the exception of his quarterback and is just going to eat it in his first year and his ego and his bank account can take it? or has he completely lost it? What do you think, Ray?
Well, again, there are two things going on here. There's Gruden, the coach, and I don't know that there's evidence to suggest that he's lost it as a coach. I think he still understands schemes and tactics and things like that, just because we haven't seen any evidence that he hasn't. The Raiders have not lost any games this year because he coached poorly. But as a general manager, his reputation is pretty close to rock bottom, not just because of what he's done this year, but because of his work in Tampa, too. I think the Jon Gruden legacy is ultimately going to be that he asked for everything, and to his great horror, he got it. It's a job that nobody else does both jobs anymore except Belichick, and Belichick can do it because he's got more rings than fingers. Everybody else works for somebody above him. Every other coach reports to a general manager, and if they do their jobs well, they get along and they see the game the same way. And if they don't, somebody gets fired. Gruden basically is having arguments in his own head every day about what to do with this team and with this franchise. And Gruden, I don't think, is the sort of guy who can do that well because he is so intense as a coach and so old school in that sort of cultural way with his coaching at a time when being a general manager requires a level of flexibility that I don't think Gruden, the coach, is comfortable with. The Khalil Mack thing is incredibly instructive because at the same time that Mack was holding out and making Gruden crazy, Aaron Donald was holding out, and the Rams figured out a way to make that work. So when 400 miles away, the answer is there for you, and you don't want to look at it, then you've got a problem sort of conceptually with what you think this franchise should be. And I think that is the great failing with Gruden. It's not coaching, it's general managing. And it's general managing in a very changing era for this sport.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern on Audience.